Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And I decided to go ahead based on some responses I'm getting on Reef to Reef. Jesse from Sweet Reef Corals, Alan, who I interact with regularly as we discuss the advancement of the microbiome, bacteria dosing, phosphate, nitrate, nutrient levels. Get into all those advanced topics. CRT Reefs on Instagram is what he goes by. My buddy Cole, who is a local reefer who understands this on the very same level, which is on a microbial level. And it doesn't always need to be that we're using products as our way of getting there. Sometimes it's as simple as just creating as much micro-diversity within our aquariums as we can. If we reel back several years ago, we were having great success with reef keeping with things that are just as simple as a 40-gallon breeder with a hang-on back protein skimmer, some Fiji rock, and highlights, and call it a day. And we're growing coral. So what's happened that's so much different? Well, I believe, truthfully, that we are getting into a place where everything is becoming so sterile that we're missing the key component of what this ecosystem really needs in order to thrive. What do these acropores really need in order to thrive? Remember, their feeder polyps are relatively small, so they need to feed on foods that are the size, micron size, that they'll be able to bring in with their coral polyps. Less than the plant building process through the zooxanthellae, which is, of course, bringing in nutrients for the photosynthesis aspects of coral building as well. So that all in mind, I believe that in the closed environment, that bacteria becomes quite an important and efficient means of getting foods to these corals. So building the biome is quite essential at creating a balanced ecosystem where all microorganisms are thriving, right? And so when we look at test kits and nitrate levels and phosphate levels, remember, those are just tests that are a snapshot of where the water is at that present time. There's far more going on in these aquariums to just use a level or a test to be your source of information gathering and falsely lead you into directions that could cause possibly failure or just maybe setbacks or just general headaches. So let's dive into Rebiotic, because that's a product that I've been using, and it's been in order to kind of refresh the system, all right, and to bring in bacteria. And this is in a dry form that activates with tank water. So as you can see the picture with a stir stick, that is in effort to stir for an hour prior to dispensing to the system. That's 1.5 teaspoons and 1 liter of water stirred for an hour, until it's stirred up nicely, and then let it sit for an hour to activate, and then dispense it. And then when doing so, it goes into this reef right here, and I isolate it into the system until it clears up. It really resembles a coral snow event that you might see when you release mulm, if you will, from zeolite stones in the zeovit method. Very similar type of snowing event that you would see, but on a much larger scale. And so feeder polyps do come out. Fish become more active. So are they feeding? Are the microorganisms in fact feeding on this? I believe so. So then once I open up the gateway, so to speak, to allow the water to enter into the entire system, let's go take a peek at what creates the total microbiome and my efforts that I'm trying to make in order to advance the bacteria homing and the microorganism capacity within the aquarium. So additionally, I added a 1-inch sand bed to the prop tank. Ironically, all the dinos, cyano, all the algae that were forming in here as a result of all the new surfaces are bye-bye. Why? Because I added a live sand bed, and now there's just so much homing potential for bacteria that it's winning the war on surface areas. And so, yeah, so that's pretty cool. I actually just took an old sand bed that had gone pretty much just sitting in a tank for a long time, but teeming with life, and I just cleansed it off with a water change, and then reintroduced it after I stirred it several times until the water cleared. That light sand bed was then transferred over, and no harm, no foul, no issues. I mean, the sand is pearly white already. I do stir it up every couple of days, and then I release a coral, do-it-yourself coral snow with nitrifying bacteria to re-cleanse the sand surfaces. But like literally all that is a food source. So when stirred, it just goes into the overall system, and of course that delivers down into this area. Right here you can see my returns from the display coming through the wall, and then they are right down in there. Let's take a little bit more of a peek into that part of the system. So you can see there's a mesh sock, no longer a felt sock. That does not get replaced. So whatever is caught in there lives in there, and hopefully pods are living in there and microorganisms to feed off whatever's trapped in there. So that is its own ecosystem within itself right there. There's a little tank down there to catch any of the inert stuff, so hopefully it'll make cleaning the sump a little bit easier. And then as you can see down in the sump, there's biomedia, more biomedia right there in that spaghetti basket. Pan out here. That white rock standing off there is some new Marco, and then you can see old rock in there from the other system from the 90-gallon. And of course that's super clean because it's been in this sump with really no light, just a little bit of light spill from what's going on in the room. So it's algae and stuff like that are gone. So the rock is perfectly in balance to inoculate all this rock as well as biomedia, which there's a lot in here. So as you can see, sand, diverse, lots of surface area, diverse microorganisms. They are allowing this fishless system out here that's connected to that sump that you can barely see, connected to the tank in the other room. It actually stirs, when stirred, it actually delivers food to the main system. And it's because some stuff is getting through that mesh filter, that nylon filter, and then it's going through the system and serving as a food source to the main tank as well. So when I dispense the Rebiotic, I actually put a little bit of what's left in that pitcher into this system as well and allow it to inoculate. And so if I do that, and then I do coral snow after a sand bed stir, and I do that a couple times per week, and then put the nitrifying bacteria in, what we're doing is we're just creating just a lot of foods that are constantly being delivered all day long into the overall system. So again, it's not about feeding the corals, it's also about feeding the microorganisms in the tank as well. And so what you're seeing is, the result is that the display tank that has limited amounts of rock, and the rock that's there is unveiling algae and things that haven't shown themselves in years, even through the 90-gallon system that is no longer even up and running. Right? So this rock was from the 60, and then it went to the 90, and I'm starting to see surfaces reappear that I haven't seen since back then, which is really interesting, and it just lends me to believe that that there is such a thing as like old tank syndrome, and maybe this Rebiotic is just refreshing, and bringing a new bacteria and allowing these surfaces to go through a deep cleansing, in essence restoring their original balance. And then from there we continue to just work on the balance in our aquarium, right? If we can create as much diversity, then I think that's the key to acropora keeping. We got to remember that their feeder polyps are small. They're used to feeding on zooplankton in the wild. Incidentally, I would say that most of these foods that they do capture are very rich in phosphate. And so we talk about this thing with phosphate. What's your number? And why are people like Abe from Coral Euphoria testing a 0.00 and still having thriving, colorful, what looks to be a very mature, healthy reef? Because it's just that. It's not necessarily what your levels are. Your levels could be tied up in living organisms within the system, so they might not be available for testing. But it doesn't mean that they're not there, and it doesn't mean that bacteria isn't there in a living form waiting to die and release into the system as a food source, thereby bringing phosphate to these corals in a form that they can bring in via their feeder polyps. I don't know. That's just a question we might want to start asking ourselves, is like, are we removing all these things via UV sterilizer, via socks and filter fleece rollers, only to add it back in through coral foods that we're buying? I don't know. Are the foods already there? I don't know. If you're feeding really high quality food source, like a good frozen food source, incidentally, I feed a mix of Hikari mysis as well as PE mysis and Larry's Reef Frenzy to my system. Bountiful nutrients are in those foods. Ultimately, they're going to make their way to the overall ecosystem. And I think that's how we have to start looking at this, right? Well, we don't have to, but I think that's like the buzzword, bacteria. It's not a buzzword to me. I've been doing this all along. Sometimes I don't really get into the topic because some people don't want to hear about that. And they think it's snake oil, and they want to, tell you that, these products don't work. Well, that's fine. I can tell you that I'm very pleased with the health of the corals. I'm very pleased with the coloration. I'm becoming progressively more pleased with the overall cleanliness of the tank, of seeing surfaces looking super clean that are fully inoculated with coralline algae. Seeing tiles like this, that are literally watching algae just disappear from them. Seeing like surfaces like that right there, where I'm seeing the original polymer used to adhere that to a tile, where the white is coming back, and seeing this deep maroon algae fading away. And then in seeing these colors, that are becoming super vibrant throughout the system. Is it a coincidence? Not sure. But I can tell you the emphasis isn't on products. The emphasis is on how do I mimic nature? So I think that's in these discussions as we continue to move forward, how are we doing our best to mimic nature? And we cannot feed zooplankton. It doesn't happen in our systems because it's a closed environment. However, are there foods that are in our system that are living, that are there on tap always? Are we removing some? Is detritus really the enemy, or is it a food? I don't know. These are the questions. But thanks for checking me out. You guys have a great day. Shout out to all my reefer buddies, Hudson Reefer, Nick, cool dude, Alan, Cole, what's up? Matt, NSB Reefs, cool dude. Learn a lot from him. Jesse, Sweet Reef Coral, wanted to know more about this, so here you go, brother. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for following along.